You are a student, you will be studying your subjects or you will be listening to some lectures. That time, all of a sudden, if you start getting some doubts in your mind, some questions, if it starts popping in your head, what you are gonna do during that time? Do you go and discuss your doubts to clarify with your teacher? Do you go discuss with your friends to get the clarity? Do you go study yourself and get answer for your queries? What usually you tend to do? I tell you, most of the students, they tend to neglect the questions or doubts what they get. Usually students start thinking they are having such a silly question, a foolish question, what others will think if they go and discuss openly about their question. So that is the routine, common mentality of most of the students. Today I am going to tell you story of one big eminent clinician, physician, scientist who had similar, a very simple questions when he was studying, and he didn't leave those questions, he evolved those questions, and finally he came with such a breakthrough research which helped human community. Hi, this is Dr. Raj, creator of Mindful Achievers Academy. In this series of discussion, I am going to discuss one very interesting story of an eminent physician who gave us such a wonderful breakthrough research. He is none other than Professor Joseph Murray. He was awarded with Nobel Prize for his big research what he conducted to carry out successful organ transplantation. So for his big work, he was awarded with Nobel Prize in the year 1990. So coming to his story. Professor Joseph Murray, when he was a kid, a child, he was a very interesting boy, very curious, very passionate guy who had interest and curious to know so many things. So he had a keen interest to join medicine, and very early age he had that clarity, like he wanted to be a doctor and he wanted to serve the human community. So this was the earliest interest what he had. Initially, he was greatly influenced by one of his family physician. By seeing him, he had decided, yeah, this is the profession for him. He wanted to become a doctor. So later, he chooses medical school and he gets enrolled for doing his medicine. So during his medical school journey, so he had opportunity to learn so many good things with very big eminent professors during that time. So among them, he had one very interesting professor in the department of pathology. So his pathology professor also influenced him a lot. In one of the class, his pathology professor calls Joseph Murray and he gives a couple of slides to Joseph Murray and asks him to identify the cellular structures which are present in both the slides. So he was a young medical student during that time. Joseph Murray takes both the slides, focuses under microscope, and he identifies clearly that one slide had huge aggregation of neutrophils and one more slide had aggregation of eosinophil. So very easily he could identify the cellular structures which are present in both the slides, and he goes and tells it to his professor. Okay, so he could easily identify. So after identification of those slides, Joseph Murray starts getting one very curious question in his mind. He starts thinking why there is difference of body response in both the slides. Actually, the first slide where he identified the cellular structure as neutrophil, the slide was a kind of bacterial infection where the body's immune response showed neutrophilic aggregate. And the second slide was a parasitic infestation where the body response was with eosinophil. So very keenly Joseph Murray observes these two changes, and he was very curious to know why and how our body differentiates and acts differently as per different circumstances. It was such a breakthrough question for him. I'll tell you, it was dated back to 1940. During that time, the information, the knowledge about immunological process, immunological behavior, how our body immunity works, so all this knowledge was not very matured. During that time, he gets this question. It was a very simple question for him. He wanted to know like how body differentiates and how it responds specifically different to different circumstances. He will not leave this question, he will not neglect this question, he carries this question seeds in his mind, he carries the same question, he evolves with this question, and finally he comes up with such a breakthrough research by developing immunological mechanism, by understanding immunological mechanism of rejection, and finally he will be able to come up with a process to modify body's immune response and make successful organ grafting in anybody's body. It was such a breakthrough process, and after he gets Nobel Prize, he will be interviewed by one of the interviewer, and the interviewer asks Professor Joseph Murray, what was the first triggering point? How you got to know? How you started thinking you have to do something for organ transplantation? How you understood the process? Joseph Murray quotes the same incidents, the incidents which happened with his professor of pathology, how he started getting this question and how he evolved the same question. So this was the thing which happened during his medical school days. After he finished his medical schooling, he gets enrolled working into a military hospital. And it was the time of World War II, and his military hospital was getting lot of patients who were war victims. And in that war victims, majority of the people were burn victims. So he had one of his colleague by name Colonel Brown. So Colonel Brown will be working on treating burn patients, and he had evolved technology to address burn patients, to treat burn patients with skin grafting. So he had successfully treated so many burn patients by doing skin grafting. He had his own set of observation. His major observations were like, if the skin graft is done from the same person, there will not be any rejection of skin graft. But if Colonel Brown had taken graft from different person, the body used to identify that graft as a foreign material, and the body will eventually reject that skin graft. And he had one more finer observation. The observation was, if the donor was a very distant, unrelated person, the chances of rejection was very high, very severe and very acute. But if the donor was a near relative, the rejection was less. And most beautiful thing was, if the donor was identical twin donor, the chances of rejection was very, very minimum. So this was the observation what Colonel Brown had done out of his study. So now Joseph Murray takes all this observation, he accumulates all these knowledge facts, and now he starts thinking about organ transplantation. So now he starts very seriously how he can evolve some process to implement organ transplantation. That time it was not at all an easy journey for Professor Joseph Murray. Everybody started laughing on him, even his own colleagues, friends, the community. They started degrading him on his concept, because nobody believed there will be any possibility of taking organ from one person and make it viable and functional in some other's body. And more or less, it was a kind of ethical question in the community. So many people degraded him. Many people started inhibiting him on developing his concept. But Professor Joseph Murray was very clear in his vision. He knew what he is going to do. He knew at the end of the day, so what best result he can give to the community. He didn't leave his question, he didn't leave his passion, he took it very seriously, and he kept on doing rigorous research on organ transplantation. So finally he comes up with a beautiful technology to make successful organ transplantation. For this he was awarded with Nobel Prize in the year 1990. It is such a fantastic story of Professor Joseph Murray, and every big successful person has got so many learning lessons for all of us. We can learn so many things out of their success stories. First of all, getting question is the first thing what can happen, what best can happen to any person. So whenever you are reading something, whenever you are coming across something, be curious to know things. As a kid, we all will be curious to know, explore things and understand things. But as we grow older, we start taking things for granted. But if we develop that curiosity to understand, analyze why it is happening, and what is it, what it is, how it is happening. If you start getting these kind of curious questions, analyzing anything, so then tomorrow we might come up with some breakthrough result out of our thoughts. And most of the time what we think as silly question, so remember, these silly questions are the one which has led to breakthrough research at the end of the day. So many people who came with so many bigger innovations, discoveries, they started getting all these kind of silly questions in the beginning. If you dare enough to accept your silly questions, if you start working on your silly questions in a right way, I am telling you, these kind of silly questions are the one which can bring up a very big breakthrough result at the end of the day. And my dear friends, remember, the world will not accept any of your new thoughts. Anybody who comes with a new thought, so definitely initially the people around you, the surrounding environment, it starts degrading you. It starts pulling your leg. Don't worry. So this is the phase every successful people has undergone. I can tell you the stories of hundreds of people who have undergone this phase. They come up with a very new thing. Initially it was a kind of very silly thing. Nobody accepted it. Everybody laughed at it. So finally at the end of the day, these are all the people who worked and proved themselves, and finally the world accepted, and the whole world got benefited out of their works. So whatever the questions, the minor questions, take it, evolve with your questions and try to go depth of your question and try to bring something big breakthrough at the end of the day. So with this series of discussion, I am bringing you lots and lots of success stories, and let's go on learning the success lessons from successful people. Keep watching and following my videos for more success updates and success stories. Thank you.